Imagine for a second, reading a book you've known your entire life.
Right, like a childhood favorite or something.
Yeah, exactly. Something you know back to front. But suddenly you realize you've been entirely misreading the main characters from literally page one.
Oh, that is such a jarring feeling.
Right. And what if the proof of this staggering reversal wasn't hidden in some recently unearthed scroll or some secret vault?
Like an Indiana Jones kind of discovery?
Yeah, no, nothing like that. What if it was buried in plain sight, just sitting there, hinging entirely on the strict, unyielding application of grammar?
That forces a complete recalibration of how you read anything. I mean, we grow so accustomed to the cultural sediment that settles over ancient texts.
Cultural sediment, I like that phrase.
Well, it's true, The centuries of commentary, the Sunday school summaries, the historical assumptions, we start reading the sediment instead of the raw data underneath.
And that is the exact paradox we are tackling today. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Today we are exploring a highly unconventional, honestly paradigm-shifting textual analysis by Dr. Khalid Walid.
It really is a fascinating piece of work.
It is. His work is titled Scriptural Duality, the Quranic Distinction Between Israel and Jacob. And to put it mildly, Dr. Walid's thesis challenges thousands of years of almost universally accepted tradition.
Across multiple Abrahamic faiths, honestly.
Exactly. So let's lay out the mission here. The standard historical consensus has always treated Jacob, who is known as Yaqub in the Arabic text, and the figure known as Israel as interchangeable titles.
Right. The tradition claims they are the exact same historical patriarch.
But Dr. Walid sets out to dismantle that equivalence entirely.
And his methodology here is really what makes this analysis so demanding, because he refuses to import any outside historical tradition.
None at all.
Zero. No later commentary, no historical assumptions. He treats the Quranic text as a closed, highly precise mathematical system.
Which means if the internal logic of that closed system doesn't support the traditional narrative, Dr. Walid just discards the tradition.
Yep. He throws it out.
And his ultimate conclusion isn't simply that Jacob and Israel are two different historical people. He argues they are entirely different entities.
Representing totally diametrically opposed forces.
Right. And here's the wildest part. He argues that the entity known as Israel might actually predate the existence of humanity itself.
It is a massive, massive claim.
It really is. And to navigate it properly, we really have to establish the ground rules of our analysis today.
Yeah, we need a disclaimer here.
Absolutely. Because Dr. Walid is making bold, hyper-specific theological claims that deconstruct the foundational narratives of billions of people.
So our purpose today is not to endorse his theology.
Well, no, not at all.
We are not here to validate or invalidate the scriptural beliefs of any tradition, left or right, traditional or modern.
Right. We are here to act strictly as your analytical guides. We're going to impartially unpack Dr. Walid's methodology.
We're basically presenting his architectural blueprint of the text exactly as he designed it.
Exactly. We're looking at how he builds this argument from the ground up, using only the structural materials provided by the text itself.
So we should probably start with the foundation of that architecture, right? The linguistic data.
Let's do it, because to a casual reader, ancient names and titles often just blur together depending on the context.
Sure. I mean, a king is called a sovereign, a conqueror, a father of the nation. People use multiple titles for one person all the time.
But Dr. Walid's foundational premise is that a divine text does not contain filler. It does not use loose synonyms just for convenience.
Right. It operates with absolute linguistic precision.
So he argues that the text never functionally treats Jacob and Israel as interchangeable. And he starts with the rules of classical Arabic conjunctions.
Yes, specifically, he focuses intensely on the Arabic letter wa.
The wa. Okay, let's unpack this for the listener. How does the wa work?
Well, it operates very similarly to the English word and.
Okay, simple enough.
Right, but he points to a very specific verse, Surah Maryam, verse 58. The verse lists groups of people who receive divine favor.
Okay.
It traces a lineage, right? It mentions the descendants of Adam, then those carried in the ark with Noah, and then it specifies, and this is the key part, from the descendants of Abraham and Israel.
Wa Israel.
Israel.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic here immediately because classical Arabic, like a lot of ancient languages, is highly fluid, right?
Very fluid. Yes.
The conjunction wa isn't always a strict separator. Like sometimes it's explanatory or it's used to append a specific title to a general group for emphasis.
Right, like saying the royal family and the king.
Exactly. So why can't the text just be saying the descendants of Abraham, specifically through his grandson Israel?
And see, that is the exact defense traditional exegesis uses to resolve the anomaly.
Because it makes intuitive sense.
It does. But Dr. Walid argues that applying that fluidity here breaks the text's own internal rules of categorization.
Well, it is undisputed internally that Jacob is the descendant of Abraham. He is the grandson.
Right.
So if Jacob and Israel are the exact same person, adding "and Israel" to the phrase descendants of Abraham introduces a glaring redundancy.
Oh.
And remember, he insists this text is perfectly curated. No wasted words.
So in his sort of mathematical approach, a parent set cannot be joined to its own subset using a conjunction of separation.
Precisely.
It's like, okay, think about a legal document. If I issue a decree affecting the citizens of France and the citizens of Paris...
Any lawyer would immediately object to that.
Right, because Paris is already captured within France. It's totally redundant.
Exactly. If the text meant to emphasize the specific lineage of the grandson, Arabic has grammatical structures for apposition.
Like ways to say meaning or specifically?
Yes, exactly. But the text doesn't use those. It uses wa, the conjunction of coordination.
So it's placing them side by side.
Yes. Therefore, according to Dr. Walid's literalist framework, the lineage of Abraham and the lineage of Israel are presented as two categorically distinct entities.
Functioning in parallel, that is wild.
And he takes that separation even further when analyzing how the text categorizes their respective descendants.
Oh, right. The shift in definite versus indefinite articles. This part is fascinating.
It really is. It's the morphological distinction between al-asbat and asbatan umaman.
Okay, let's break those down. What is al-asbat?
So when the text refers to the prophetic descendants of Jacob, it exclusively uses the term al-asbat. The al prefix is the definite article.
Functioning like the C in English.
Exactly. It denotes a specific, known, divinely guided group of prophet descendants. They are a defined, preferred lineage.
Okay, so the tribes of Jacob, very specific. But when the text addresses the sprawling tribes associated with the children of Israel, the grammar shifts, right?
It shifts completely to asbatan umaman, which is indefinite.
Indefinite, meaning no the.
Right. It translates more closely to tribes forming nations.
And what's the significance of that indefinite phrasing for Dr. Walid?
He notes that in the Quranic context, this indefinite phrasing refers to fragmented, sprawling populations that required constant earthly management.
Like they needed captains and constant intervention.
Yes, exactly. They're an unguided mass, not a definite prophetic lineage like Jacob's descendants.
Wow. So the text is linguistically fencing them off from one another. On one side, you have a defined, divinely guided family tree.
And on the other, an indefinite, highly problematic geopolitical entity.
But, you know, the most glaring piece of evidence Dr. Walid presents for the separation isn't a specific word at all.
No, it's an omission.
Right. The silence of Surah Yusuf. This blew my mind when I read his analysis.
The chapter of Joseph. From a purely structural standpoint, I think this is Dr. Walid's most difficult anomaly for traditionalists to explain away.
Okay, so set the scene for the listener. What is this chapter?
Well, it's 111 verses long. It is the definitive, exhaustively detailed narrative of Jacob, his son Joseph, and Joseph's brothers.
It's literally the origin story of this specific family.
Exactly. It's full of family drama, betrayal, reconciliation, and yet, across all 111 verses,
the term children of Israel, or Banu Israel, is completely absent.
Not used a single time.
That is staggering. The text only ever refers to them as the brothers of Joseph or the family of Jacob.
Right. If we rely on the traditional assumption that Jacob is Israel, the statistical probability of that title being omitted from the very chapter dedicated to establishing his legacy is, well, it's incredibly low.
It doesn't make any sense. Why would a perfectly precise text scrub the defining national title of these people from their own Genesis story?
But of course, tradition has spent centuries resolving that.
How do they explain it?
They argue the title Israel was bestowed later in his life, or that children of Israel, as a demographic identifier, didn't crystallize until the Exodus in Egypt.
Oh, so they argue it's an anachronism to expect the title in the Joseph narrative.
Exactly. That's the traditional defense.
How does Dr. Walid counter that?
He points out how the Quran frequently uses prolepsis.
Prolepsis?
Yeah, referring to groups or individuals by their future titles to maintain narrative consistency. It does it all the time.
Ah, okay.
But more importantly, he returns to his core thesis, treating the text as a strict legal document.
Let's go back to the corporate analogy.
Right. If you have a massive foundational contract And the clauses detailing the office of the CEO are entirely segregated from the clauses detailing the entity of the founder.
You have to treat them as separate legal entities.
You must. They have distinct liabilities, regardless of whether the broader corporate culture assumes they're the same person.
So Dr. Walid is essentially saying, we've been reading a strict legal contract through the lens of, like, informal water cooler gossip.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But he doesn't just rest his case on grammatical anomalies and missing titles, does he?
No, the grammar merely points to a much deeper, honestly, much more troubling divide.
Because according to Dr. Walid, the text separates Jacob and Israel not just by syntax, but by fundamentally opposing spiritual profiles.
This brings us to his behavioral analysis.
Right, section 2. The submitting prophet versus the self-legislator.
Dr. Walid constructs these contrasting behavioral resumes for the two figures, and he bases it entirely on how the text describes their actions.
Let's start with Jacob's resume.
Jacob is portrayed flawlessly. He is a submitting, obedient prophet who executes divine will without deviation.
A perfect middle manager for the divine.
Exactly. Israel, however, is defined by an unprecedented act of rebellion.
Dr. Walid calls this the act of self-legislation.
Yes, and we need to look at the specific verse that triggers this charge, because it completely recontextualizes a detail that usually just gets glossed over.
Which verse is this?
Ali Imran, verse 93. It discusses dietary laws prior to the revelation of the Torah.
Okay, what does it say?
The verse states that all food was lawful to the children of Israel, except what Israel forbade for himself.
Except what Israel forbade for himself.
In Dr. Walid's framework, that phrase is a theological earthquake.
Because a prophet isn't supposed to forbid things on their own authority.
Exactly. He stresses that the Quran never attributes this kind of arbitrary, self-serving prohibition to Jacob.
Or to any legitimate prophet. Right.
The core function of a prophet in this textual system is to act as an uncorrupted conduit for divine law. They do not manufacture the law, they deliver it.
So to look at a permissible resource, something God has made lawful, and decide on your own earthly authority to declare it forbidden.
It is a catastrophic overstepping of bounds. It's the arrogance of rewriting the divine code.
Dr. Walid connects this unauthorized modification to a really severe Quranic concept, right? Insilak.
Yes, insilak. The root word relates to the peeling of skin or the shedding of a protective layer.
Like a snake shedding its skin.
Very similar.
Yeah.
In Al-Araf, verse 175, the text describes an entity who was granted divine signs and knowledge, but then stripped himself of them, committed insilak, and subsequently followed Satan.
Oh, wow. So Dr. Walid argues that Israel, having access to the original divine knowledge of what was lawful, actively chose to alter that law to forbid food without authorization.
Yes. And that act of self-legislation is the ultimate manifestation of insilak.
He views it as crossing a metaphysical Rubicon.
He really does.
Yeah.
Because in Quranic theology, modifying divine law without permission borders on polytheism.
Because you're making yourself a god.
You are setting yourself up as an independent legislative partner to God. Dr. Walid argues that Jacob, a figure whose entire textual identity is predicated on pure submission.
His Islam in the literal linguistic sense of yielding to God.
Exactly. Jacob could never be the entity committing insilak.
This requires a structural analogy to really grasp the severity of what Dr. Walid is claiming. Let's use the franchise manager idea.
Let's hear it.
Think of an empire ruled by a strict, constitutionally bound monarch. The monarch issues a comprehensive legal code for all provinces.
Okay, so Jacob is one of the provincial magistrates.
Right. Jacob operates as a loyal provincial magistrate. He receives the monarch's laws, applies them exactly as written, and his province thrives. He is praised by the capital.
A perfect conduit.
But Israel, in Dr. Walid's reading, operates as a rogue governor. He receives the same legal code, but decides on his own authority, I am going to ban the harvest of wheat in my province.
Even though the monarch didn't command it.
Exactly. He does it because he has decided it serves his own purposes.
The rogue governor is effectively declaring himself a sovereign entity within the empire.
He is manufacturing his own law. And Dr. Walid finds compelling structural proof that the monarch, the divine text, treats these two managers entirely differently when they make errors.
He does. He points to the concept of the Sunnah of Imla.
Imla, the tradition of divine respite.
This is a highly nuanced observation regarding how the text manages divine intervention. Dr. Walid maps out a really clear pattern.
What's the pattern?
When recognized prophets make even minor errors in judgment, The divine narrative corrects them immediately.
Like real-time correction.
Yes, there is no delay. Prophet Muhammad, for instance, is gently admonished in the text for briefly turning his attention away from a blind seeker to focus on wealthy leaders.
The correction is swift, it's recorded for all time, and it results in immediate realignment.
The feedback loop is instantaneous. The monarch sends a raven to the loyal magistrate the moment he misinterprets a clause, ensuring the law remains pure.
Right. But look at how the text handles Israel's act of forbidding food.
There is no immediate divine correction recorded. He is not admonished in real time.
Instead, he receives imla.
Respite, or delayed consequence, he's permitted to persist in his altered law.
And Dr. Walid highlights that within the Quranic ecosystem, imla is a treatment reserved strictly for the rebellious.
For the deeply arrogant and the enemies of the divine order, they are given enough rope to hang themselves.
That is chilling. The text corrects its prophets. It grants a terrifying silence to its rebels.
By demonstrating that Israel receives the treatment of a rebel rather than the correction of a prophet, Dr. Walid solidifies the behavioral divide.
Jacob is the submitting conduit. Israel is the self-legislating rogue.
But this forces us into a massive historical and chronological paradox.
Yeah, a huge one. Because if Israel is not Jacob, and he was unilaterally rewriting dietary laws before the Torah was ever revealed.
When exactly did this rogue governor live?
Right. If we sever Israel from the historical patriarch Jacob, we sever him from a defined coordinate on the historical timeline.
And this is where Dr. Walid's thesis transitions from a rigorous linguistic critique into a sweeping cosmic reinterpretation of the scriptural universe.
Section 3, the pre-Adamic theory. This is where it gets really sci-fi.
He argues that the entity known as Israel and the phenomenon of his children actually predate the creation of Adam.
Meaning he places them before the genesis of humanity.
Yes.
Okay, wait. That breaks standard linear chronology entirely. If we apply that strictly, we are left with a massive chronological gap.
It's a huge leap.
How does Dr. Walid justify placing an entity we associate with Middle Eastern history before the first human being?
He justifies it through a strict analysis of causality and narrative sequencing, specifically in Al-Ma'idah, verse 32.
Okay, what happens in that verse?
The text recounts the story of Adam's two sons, leading to the first murder on earth, Cain and Abel.
Right, the very first human crime.
Exactly. Now, immediately following the description of that murder, the text states, "Because of that, we decreed upon the children of Israel that whoever kills a soul, it is as if he had slain mankind entirely."
Okay, pause. Because of that, we decreed upon the children of Israel. The causality is explicitly linked.
Yes. Dr. Walid applies his mathematical logic here again. He asks, how could a specific law of retributive justice be decreed and written for the children of Israel as a direct consequence of a crime committed by Adam's sons if Jacob and his descendants would not exist for thousands of years?
Why address a foundational legal decree to a demographic void?
Exactly. Why issue a law to a group that doesn't exist yet?
The traditional counter-argument to this is pretty straightforward, though. They say the text is simply stating a universal law that was eventually handed down to the Israelites in the Torah, using the story of Cain and Abel as the moral preamble.
Sure, that's the standard read. But Dr. Walid argues that traditional reading ignores the direct, immediate causal link of, because of that, we decreed.
Right. The linguistic precision again.
He concludes that for the text to remain internally coherent without relying on massive chronological leaps, the children of Israel had to be a present active demographic at the time of Adam's children.
They were the audience receiving the decree.
Yes. But he pushes the timeline back even further, right to the exact moment Adam is created.
Oh, the dialogue with the angels. Al-Baqarah, verse 30.
Yes, the announcement of the Khalifa. God informs the angels that he is placing a Khalifa, a successor or steward on earth, referring to Adam.
And the angels immediately protest.
Right. They ask, will you place upon it one who causes corruption therein and sheds blood, or we declare your praise?
And Dr. Walid approaches this dialogue like a forensic investigator.
Because in Islamic theology, angels do not possess independent knowledge of the unseen or the future unless it is explicitly granted to them.
Right, so how do they possess such a vivid, specific understanding of what sentient life on Earth will do?
How do they know what corruption and shedding blood look like?
They aren't divining the future, they are recalling the past.
Exactly. Dr. Walid argues they had witnessed the catastrophic failure of a previous occupant.
And to identify who that previous occupant was, he searches the text for those exact diagnostic markers.
He asks, Who are the primary entities repeatedly, explicitly indicted for causing corruption in the land and shedding blood, specifically the blood of prophets, throughout the rest of the Quran?
And the text points the finger almost exclusively at the children of Israel.
Constantly. Those specific accusations are their defining textual attributes.
So Dr. Walid connects the semantic dots. The angels were terrified of the new Khalifa because they remembered the historical track record of the children of Israel.
They had watched the previous entity shed blood, and they assumed Adam would run the same corrupted program.
I have to ground this in an analogy because the implications of an Earth OS 1.0 are staggering. It implies an architectural layering of civilizations.
Right, Earth OS 1.0 versus Earth OS 2.0.
Imagine an ancient, sprawling city built by a sophisticated but deeply corrupt empire, the Empire of Israel. This society ultimately collapsed under the weight of its own violence, its corruption, and its self-legislated laws. The city was left in ruins.
Total collapse.
Right. Then, eons later, an architect arrives to build a new settlement on those exact same ruins. That new settlement is humanity, starting with Adam.
And the angels are the surveyors.
Exactly. The angels are the surveyors who remember the collapse of the first city. They watch the foundation for humanity being poured over the old, corrupted plumbing of the Israel Empire, and they warn the architect. Are you really building here again? Don't you remember the bloodshed that destroyed the first city?
Humanity is built directly on top of the ruins of a pre-Adamic failed civilization. And the etymology of the word Khalifa perfectly supports your analogy of building upon ruins. A successor, by definition, takes the place of someone who is removed or who failed.
So Dr. Walid's literal reading forces a cyclical, layered view of Earth's history rather than a strictly linear genesis.
He finds further structural evidence for this ancient survival in how the text categorizes survivors of global cataclysms.
You mean the distinction made during the flood of Noah?
Yes. In All Israel verses 2 and 3, the Quran introduces Moses and the scripture given to him for the children of Israel.
Okay.
But notice how it addresses them. It does not call them the children of Abraham, nor does it use the broad umbrella of the children of Adam. It specifically addresses them as the descendants of those we carried with Noah.
Why that specific phrasing? Why not just say, children of Abraham?
Dr. Walid argues it intentionally segregates their lineage. It implies that the core essence, or surviving adherents, of this ancient pre-Adamic Israel civilization were present, survived the deluge alongside Noah, and carried their legacy forward, running parallel to the Adamic lineage.
Okay, if we accept this premise that Israel predates humanity, the immediate wall I hit is historical reality.
Sure, but it's a huge hurdle.
We have literal archaeological and historical records of the tribes of Israel interacting with Moses, migrating through the Levant, and clashing with empires.
They do.
How can a pre-Adamic cosmic entity be wandering the desert of the Middle East? How does Dr. Walid bridge the gap between a pre-human civilization and a localized historical tribe?
He bridges that massive gap by completely redefining the biological assumptions we bring to the text.
We're moving into section 4 here, bloodline versus ideological franchise.
Right. He argues that we fundamentally misunderstand what the word children means in scriptural linguistics. Dr. Walid posits that Benu Israel, or the children of Israel, is not a biological bloodline.
It does not trace back to a single human grandfather's DNA.
Not at all. He argues it denotes an ideological franchise.
An ideological franchise.
A behavioral program that can be adopted by anyone in any era, regardless of their genetic makeup.
But wait, you can't just casually change the definition of children from biology to ideology just to make a timeline work? Does the text actually support that fluid definition of sonship?
Dr. Walid demonstrates that the text explicitly demands this fluid definition in other critical areas.
For example,
he analyzes the Quran's intense theological refutation of groups claiming that Ezra or Jesus are the literal biological sons of God.
Right, the text pushes back hard on that.
Exactly. The text dismantles the biological interpretation, highlighting that in the ancient scriptural vernacular, claiming to be the son of a divine or spiritual entity was a claim of ultimate ideological alignment and authorized representation.
Not a statement of genetics.
Exactly. You are the son of the master you serve and the methodology you execute.
If you act like the founder, if you perfectly embody their operational methods, you become their child in the language of the scripture.
Therefore, a child of Israel is any group or individual who downloads and executes the methodology of the original pre-Adamic Israel entity.
And Dr. Walid reminds us exactly what that methodology is. It is the process of inselak.
It is altering divine laws, self-legislating what is permitted and forbidden based on earthly desires, breaking covenants, and generating corruption.
So when the text talks about the people wandering the desert with Moses, calling them the children of Israel, it isn't making a genetic claim about their ancestry.
No, it is making a behavioral diagnosis.
They're called that because they were exhibiting the exact same rebellious, self-legislating behaviors as the ancient ruined civilization. They had adopted the franchise.
They had resurrected the ruins. Uncoupling genetics from spiritual destiny is absolutely central to Dr. Walid's framework. Being a child of Israel is an active state of rebellion, a constant gatekeeping of truth.
And Dr. Walid proves this by contrasting how the text applies covenants to different groups.
The extraction of pledges. There is a massive disparity in how the text handles the descendants of Jacob versus the children of Israel.
Let's look at that disparity. How are the children of Israel handled?
Dr. Walid points out that whenever the text deals with the children of Israel, it requires overwhelming, terrifying displays of divine force to secure their obedience.
Literally raising a mountain over them.
Yes. The text literally describes raising a mountain over them just to extract a pledge. It repeatedly diagnoses them with a hardened heart.
A fundamental gravitational pull toward rebellion that requires heavy, forceful covenants to counteract.
Right. They're constantly trying to rewrite the rules, so the text has to lock them into ironclad behavioral contracts under threat of annihilation.
But when you look at the family of Jacob, the definite al-Isbat,
no such heavy, violent covenant is ever required.
The text describes Jacob's true ideological descendants as possessing soft hearts, naturally inclined toward the divine will.
They don't need a mountain suspended over their heads because their operating system is pure submission.
Dr. Walid asks, if the descendants of Jacob and the children of Israel are the exact same people, why does the divine text treat their fundamental nature and their capacity for obedience so differently?
Because they are completely different behavioral profiles.
It reminds me of political movements that outlive their founders. Think about phrases like the Sons of Liberty or Children of the Revolution.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. If you call yourself a child of the revolution, you aren't providing a genealogy report. You are declaring your allegiance to a methodology of resistance. You march under that specific banner.
And Dr. Walid is arguing that Children of Israel is a dark behavioral franchise.
If you begin manufacturing your own divine rules and causing corruption in the land, you have successfully franchised the Israel brand, and the text addresses you accordingly.
And this ideological franchising explains one of the most curious historical disputes recorded in the text.
Which one is that?
Dr. Walid directs our attention to Ali Imran, verse 65. The verse addresses the people of the book, the historical inheritors of these traditions, and chastises them for constantly arguing over the legacy of Abraham.
With different factions claiming him as their exclusive founder.
Yes. The text essentially asks them, why do you argue over Abraham when your own specific scriptures weren't revealed until long after him?
But Dr. Walid looks at the negative space of that dispute.
Right, he asks. Why were these factions violently disputing over the legacy of Abraham, but they never disputed over the legacy of Israel?
If Israel was their biological patriarch, the very namesake of their nation, wouldn't they be fighting to claim his exclusive mantle as well?
That silence around Israel in these historical debates is deafening.
It really is.
Dr. Walid posits that Israel was never a point of dispute because Israel was their undisputed, shared ideological founder.
Across their various factions, they all implicitly agreed on the methodology.
Yes, the methodology of self-legislation and altering the text that Israel pioneered. That was their baseline operational code.
But Abraham
represents the pure, unadulterated Bashar program of absolute submission. He's the ultimate, uncorrupted brand.
So Dr. Walid argues they were disputing over Abraham because they were attempting to artificially graft themselves onto his pure legacy to legitimize their corrupted franchise.
They wanted the prestige of Abraham's submission while running the behavioral software of Israel's rebellion.
It's like a deeply corrupt corporation attempting a hostile takeover of a beloved, transparent charity just to launder their public image.
Exactly.
They know their actual founder's legacy is toxic, so they try to wear Abraham's legacy as a mask, and the scriptural text is calling them out, severing that connection.
And this brings us to the final, most expansive argument in Dr. Walid's thesis, section 5.
Two creations, two paths.
Right. He doesn't view this merely as a historical dispute between ancient tribes. He scales this Israel-Jacob duality up to a fundamental, cosmic level.
He argues it reflects a duality woven into the very mechanics of how sentient life was created.
He starts analyzing the actual Arabic terminology used for the creation of humanity, finding the same bifurcated structure.
Because we usually blend all these terms together into a generic concept of mankind.
But Dr. Walid strictly divides two specific words, bashar and insan.
Just as he separated Jacob and Israel, he separates the creation pathways of bashar and insan.
Standard translations treat them as synonyms, but Dr. Walid tracks their specific usages and origins. According to the Quranic text, bashar is specifically described as being created from clay and infused directly with the divine spirit.
Clay plus divine spirit. What is the behavioral output of that specific creation recipe?
Because the bashar is infused with the divine spirit, its defining characteristic is the innate capacity for pure submission.
This is the pathway that leads to Adam.
Yes, it is the lineage of the submitting prophets, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. They represent the apex of the bashar program. They are what the text refers to as the good tree.
And what about insan?
Insan is a completely different structural origin. The text describes insan as being created from a clot, or a clinging substance.
And how does that affect their behavior?
Well, Dr. Walid meticulously catalogs how the word insan is utilized throughout the Quran. The behavioral output is overwhelmingly negative.
In what way?
The insan is constantly diagnosed in the text as transgressing, ungrateful, hasty, argumentative, despairing, and deeply rebellious.
So Dr. Walid maps the ancient entity of Israel onto the insan pathway and the prophetic figure of Jacob onto the bashar pathway.
Exactly. He roots this in the Quranic law of pairs, or zajain, which states that all things are created in opposing pairs.
Dr. Walid applies this universal law to sentient, accountable life.
You have the pure, submitting lineage flowing from the bashar Adam to Abraham to Jacob. And operating in parallel, often in direct conflict, you have the rebellious, self-legislating lineage flowing from the insan program, the ancient entity of Israel and its ideological descendants.
Two completely divergent operational codes, two different trees running simultaneously on the hardware of Earth.
And recognizing these two incompatible codes is the only way to understand why divine intervention looks so radically different when applied to them.
Right. Dr. Walid points to this specific function of the Furqan.
The Furqan, usually translated as the criterion.
Yes, the criterion required to distinguish truth from falsehood.
The Quran explicitly states that Moses was given the Furqan specifically for the children of Israel. Dr. Walid asks a critical question. Why did they require a massive specific intervention just to tell them what was true and what was false?
Because their foundational software was corrupted from the beginning.
Precisely. As Dr. Walid established with the food prohibitions, their ideological founder, Israel, had actively mixed truth with falsehood through self-legislation.
The children of Israel were running a code so deeply corrupted by centuries of rewriting divine law that they had lost the internal capacity to differentiate between God's actual decrees and their own manufactured rules.
The Furqan wasn't just a book, it was a necessary external hard reset for a failed system.
But Jacob's lineage, the submitting prophets running the bashar program, never needed a Furqan.
They didn't need a hard reset because, according to Dr. Walid, they never deviated from the original code. They never abandoned what the text calls the word of equity, or kalima sawa.
They were running the pure software of submission continuously.
You don't need a criterion to separate truth from falsehood if you have never engaged in the insilak of mixing them together.
When you step back and look at the architecture Dr. Walid has constructed, it is genuinely staggering.
It really is.
We start with what seems like pedantic grammar, a misplaced conjunction, the absence of a title in one chapter, the shift from a definite to an indefinite article.
And from those microscopic linguistic anomalies, he builds a massive cosmic theology.
He transforms what we thought was a localized Middle Eastern family drama about tribes fighting over land into a sci-fi epic about two fundamental forces of the universe battling across eons.
By rigidly refusing to equate Jacob and Israel, he frames the entire scriptural narrative as an ongoing war between pure submission to the divine and the arrogant impulse of self-legislation.
It is a masterclass in the profound implications of literalism.
By refusing to let external traditions smooth over the text's internal contradictions, Dr. Walid paradoxically unlocks a deeply metaphorical, sweeping vision of history.
Which brings us to the ultimate question for anyone listening. We've ventured through complex Arabic morphology, pre-Adamic civilizations, the ideological franchising of rebellion, and the dual nature of creation.
That's a lot of ground covered.
It is. So why should you, the listener, who perhaps isn't a theologian or a linguist, care about Dr. Khalid Walid's hyper-specific textual analysis?
Because his methodology is entirely transferable. It is a rigorous exercise in reading without the crutch of assumption.
Every single one of us interacts with foundational texts. It might be the Constitution of your country, it might be the charter of the corporation you work for,
Or a binding legal contract.
or even the entrenched narratives you've accepted about your own family history. We bring immense amounts of assumed tradition to the data we consume every day. We read what we expect to be there.
Dr. Walid's work challenges you to isolate the raw data in your own life and ask, am I actually reading what is written on the page, or am I just reading the cultural sediment that is settled on top of it?
If thousands of years of tradition can potentially misread the main characters of a sacred text simply by ignoring a single conjunction,
What else are we misreading because we're too comfortable with the established narrative?
we've explored the entirety of his proofs today. How grammatical walls and self-imposed dietary laws hint at a catastrophic spiritual divide.
How the timeline fractures, placing the crimes of an ancient entity before the angels even witnessed the dawn of humanity.
And how Jacob, the epitome of submission, and Israel, the architect of rebellion, represent two fundamentally distinct forces operating in the scriptural universe.
And as we close this deep dive, there is one final lingering implication of Dr. Walid's thesis that demands reflection.
It moves his theory out of the ancient past and squarely into the present.
If Israel is not a historical bloodline confined to antiquity,
If it is, as Dr. Walid argues, an ancient recurring behavioral program,
a program defined by the arrogance of altering the rules to serve oneself, ignoring ethical limits, hoarding divine truth, and justifying immense corruption under a veneer of manufactured righteousness.
the rogue governor rewriting the Constitution for his own benefit.
Exactly. If that is what the Israel program truly is, we must look at the world around us. Where do we see that exact same ideological franchise operating in our modern institutions, our political systems, and our societal structures?
And perhaps the most unsettling question of all.
Because it's a program anyone can adopt, are we accidentally running it ourselves, entirely convinced we are still reading from the right book?